and is a respected obstetrician, gynecologist, and menopause specialist from the Northern Sydney Local Health District Menopause Hub. That's a bit of a mouthful. Dr. Martha will be sharing valuable insights into the stages of menopause, including perimenopause and postmenopause, as well as options for symptom management and hormone therapy. So we'll please welcome Dr. Samir Martha. Now, if I could just, I believe there's an online presentation, but if I could get you just to maybe tell me all the great things about yourself and what you've been doing in this. Yeah, I only gave you 1 or 2 lines, but I'm sure there's, and I'll be asking that of every speaker. So the 2 other speakers, I can prep you up. So just give a bit of a background of who you are and, you know, why you're here today. And yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christine, Ku-ring-gai Council and Kim, of course, for organising this event and having us all here this evening. I feel a little bit like the Emperor with no clothes, being one of the few men in this audience. But there are. Thank you. I appreciate that. But I'm also secretly very proud of being a man and discussing this topic, because I do believe that you cannot have this topic today and not have blokes involved in this conversation. So I'm actually secretly very proud of that. And I know my mum is proud of me that I am talking about this as well. As Christine mentioned, my name is Dr. Samir Martha. I'm a gynecologist and a fertility specialist. I work privately as well as publicly in menopause. Publicly is at the Royal North Shore Hospital. And we are the recipients of government funding, where we run a complex menopause clinic where many disciplines, endocrinologists, gynecologists, dietitians, like Natalie's going to be speaking this evening, for example, we all work in kind of the same corridor multiple times during the week. And we help patients who, for example, GPs may not feel comfortable or maybe have a tricky patient, and they send them down to Royal North Shore, where we're happy to help. And we look after patients all the way up to the Central Coast and even at far west out to Dubbo. I'm actually heading out for a talk to Broken Hill next week. So that's just a little bit about what we do. I'm a young dad. I've got 2 kids of my own, and I've loved this idea so much that I'm actually going to bring it up with my local council as well. So Strathfield Council, yeah. Oh, there we go. Before I get started, thank you for all of those who submitted questions. Can you hear me okay at the back? Yeah, wonderful. All right. Let's go. So my talk is titled Alice in Menoland. This was me again, and feel free to connect with me even after this evening if you like. There'll be always more questions to come, I understand. Now, this is Alice. Alice is 50. You may remember her. She might look a little bit familiar. She's actually the same Alice from Alice in Wonderland, but now she's in a different part of her life. For the last few years, she's been experiencing a range of different symptoms. So naturally, like all of us, she picks up her phone and goes to social media, and that's where she finds herself tumbling down the rabbit hole of social media that tells her to do things like balance her chakras and only eat celery and other similar advice. So today I would like to guide you through some of the symptoms, a little bit about the management of perimenopause and menopause, and hopefully truly make this stage of your life just the beginning of Wonderland. Yeah. So welcome to Menoland. In this country, 13.7 million of us are Australian women. And that pie chart illustrates how many have already gone through or how many will go through menopause. Okay. Just some definitions to start off with. Menopause is a single day. It's a date. It's the date of your final menstrual period. The typical age for that is between the ages of 45, sometimes right through to the late 50s. Early menopause is classed before the age of 45, and for 3 to 4% of women, that's about 1 in 20, they will go through menopause actually before the age of 40, and we term that premature ovarian insufficiency. Perimenopause is when menstrual cycles consistently become irregular. On average, that time will last 3 to 5 years, and it's defined as once they become consistently irregular through to 12 months after the final menstrual period. It's a time characterized by fluctuating sex hormones and the symptoms that can often go hand in hand with those fluctuating hormones. The postmenopause begins 12 months after the final menstrual period, and that's obviously the rest of the life. Whilst 80% of women will experience some symptoms in that time frame, about 25% of those symptoms will be classed as either moderate or severe. On average, those symptoms will go for about 7 to 8 years. Now, humans are not unique in going through menopause. Orcas, for example, go through menopause as well. And it's hypothesized that it plays a very important role in orca communities when senior female orcas are no longer competing and bearing the next offspring. They play a critical role for the children and the grandchildren in those communities, in the orca communities, and are integral to the survival of children and grandchildren in those communities. And that was all published in a recent Nature paper, in fact. And I know for a lot of us, where we're not integral to the survival of our children and our grandchildren, but perhaps navigating Sydney housing crisis is a good enough reason for us to be there for our kids and our grandkids, isn't it? Why do we go through menopause? So as I mentioned, I see a lot of fertility patients, I see a lot of menopause patients, and I often put this graph up. What that shows is that women are born with approximately 2 million eggs or oocytes. By the time they've reached puberty, they're down to about 400,000 eggs. And by the time we reach menopause, we're not actually left with a whole lot many eggs. And this is why menopause is only unique to a number of mammals, because a lot of animals will not actually survive until that age. And it was only a couple of centuries ago when we ourselves didn't survive until that time. And that is also part of the reason why a lot of the science is relatively new in this space, because this phenomenon has only existed in the last 80 to 100 years. Now, let's talk a little bit about the signs and symptoms during the menopause transition, which can feel a little bit like the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. When I talk to my patients, I like to group symptoms in the domains that I've put up there. So right up the top there, does this have a little cheeky laser pointer? No, that's all right. That's all right. In your top left, I've listed vasomotor symptoms, sleep disorders, and mood disorders. And that blue diamond that I've drawn there indicates that these symptoms, so vasomotor symptoms, we're talking hot flushes, we're talking night sweats. Some of my patients will say it feels just hot all the time. These are very common symptoms. These typically will begin in the early 40s, will tend to peak in the early 50s before gradually actually getting better, okay? And that's similar to sleep disorders and mood disorders, that they all tend to get worse before they get better. These three domains of symptoms. So the sleep disorder side of things, patients will say, everything from insomnia to multiple wake-ups in the middle of the night, taking a long time to get to sleep, waking up and just not being able to get back to sleep. And so one of my focuses when looking after patients is, we just need to get your sleep back as a priority. That's really important. Mood changes. My heart really goes out. There is no surprise that when women are in their 40s, we're facing the challenges of teenage challenging years. Perhaps we're facing the challenges of ailing parents and worrying about them. Should it surprise us that marital issues then become a product of this pressure cooker of the 40s where you're getting, and let's face it, women are the cornerstone of households. And so when we're facing this pressure from both ailing parents, children, perhaps with these fluctuating sex hormones, it should come as no surprise that mood disorders come into it and hormones do not help. And it is a time of marital breakdown, and that's really sad. The other symptoms that I've listed there, urogenital atrophy typically starts in the early 50s and gets progressively worse throughout the rest of the life. And what that refers to are symptoms such as vaginal dryness, perhaps recurrent UTIs, painful intercourse. So all of these are termed within urogenital atrophy. Continence as well falls under those kind of symptoms as well. Just yesterday, I had a patient who said, and I can only say it because I'm quoting a patient. She goes, "Samir, it's Sahara Desert down there." I said, "Okay." I go, "Well, let's try and help you with that." And dyspareunia refers to painful sex. Okay, so and with sexual function, again, it's something that I always explicitly ask about because it's not something that women will generally volunteer to their GP. Yet for many couples, it can be a really, really important part of their couple life, but it's just not something that's necessarily volunteered. And finally, and something I'm going to spend just 2 minutes more talking about, are these long-term ramifications that are often tied with menopause. And I've listed there osteoporosis, atherosclerosis, so that's plaque formations in our coronary arteries, coronary artery disease, and cerebrovascular disease, so disease of the arteries leading into the brain. So we're talking things like stroke. So osteoporosis, for example, did you know that 1 in 3 Australian women and actually 1 in 5 Australian men will suffer a bone, like an osteoporotic fracture in their lifetime, 1 in 3 of us. And the really, really sad thing about a fracture is that after the age of 45, for example, if an Australian woman has a hip fracture, she has a 35% chance of dying in the 12 months after her hip fracture. And that's horrible because these are the patients that we would have all seen. They fall over, they get a hip fracture, they have in and out of hospital, chest infections from being in hospital, they can't get out of bed, they get pneumonia, it's just, and this is why osteoporosis really needs to be everyone's business. Menopause hormone treatment is a very effective way to treat bone density problems. And I always say to people, bones are not like metal scaffolding. They are muscles. They are just like muscles. You can lose it, but the great news is you can also build it right back. And so I'm always going on, and Natalie will attest to it, as I'm like, squats, deadlifts, everyone should be doing this. And starting it in our 60s and 70s, that's hard. But when we're in our 40s and 50s, if we're starting this, and my grandma was 85, very healthy. She passed away last year when she was 99, and she was still very healthy. At 85, she asked me, she said, "Samir, what can I do? I'm pretty healthy. What can I do?" I said, "I want you to start squatting on this stool and have a protein shake afterwards." And she would, to her credit. And I remember her 45-kilo frame. She would lose her balance because she didn't have great eyesight. She didn't have great hearing. But then she would correct herself. And touch wood, she never fell. She never fell and broke something, even though she had very brittle bones. And it was because she was just so motivated to do it. Cardiovascular disease, about 600,000 Australian women will suffer with cardiovascular disease. Before the age of 60, cardiovascular disease is not even in the top 5 killers of Australian women. After the age of 60, it rockets to number 2. And that's 8%, approximately 8% of Australian women. And 80% of those deaths are considered preventable. And why do I mention this? Because hormone replacement and cardiovascular disease are very intimately related. And that's why women are partially, during their reproductive years, protected from the effects of, say, elevated cholesterol, unlike men. After menopause, that protection drops off very quickly. And within 10 years, they quickly catch up to their male counterparts in terms of cardiovascular disease. And part of that is tied in with menopause as well. So that might be a little bit small, sorry. So why use menopausal hormone therapy? The primary indication is for treatment of symptoms. But the other points, if you can't read it, what I've written there is it is the most effective treatment for menopausal symptoms. It helps with bone health. It helps with cardiovascular health. It should often, menopause hormone therapy, or HRT as it was previously called, should always accompany a healthy lifestyle change. I'm a big advocate of that. And complementary therapies, at best, are no better than placebos in terms of managing symptoms associated with menopause. So what treatment options are available? And I do apologize, this is a really long conversation that I'm going to condense down into a couple of minutes. The first is menopause hormone therapy, or HRT, is by far the most effective treatment. And if there's one message I want everyone to leave with tonight, it's that for the vast majority of you, HRT or MHT is safe to use, and in addition to symptom control, has many other additional benefits. And I think the take-home message would be, if your doctor does not feel comfortable prescribing it, and I'm not saying it's for everyone, but at least be able to have that conversation. If your doctor is not able to, ask and ask again. I think that's a really key take-home message. There are non-hormonal therapies. There will be patients who, for a multitude of reasons, may not be good candidates for HRT. There are also symptom-specific treatments. Coming back to that patient I mentioned earlier, there are symptom-specific treatments for that patient who had the Sahara Desert, for example. There are vaginal hormone treatments. So there are symptom-specific treatments that GPs and specialists can also prescribe that can help patients. And finally, my message with it is it should be tailored to individual health needs. Many of us will wonder about the risks of MHT. And I think the one that I'm going to just spend a minute talking about is the long-term breast cancer risk. Now, that came about in the early 2000s. There was a big study, and the BBC News, amongst many other media outlets across the world, headlined these kind of articles. And what followed was about 15 to 20 years. We're really kind of now seeing it come down a little bit, but 15 to 20 years of women really turning away from HRT altogether. I'm going to just talk to you very, very quickly about the breast cancer risk. Now, if I took 1,000 women aged 50 and I watched them for the next 5 years, 23 of them would develop breast cancer. That's the background risk. It's the most prevalent cancer in Australian society. About 1 in 7 to 1 in 9 Australian women will have it across their lifetime. So between 50, follow them for 5 years, 23 women will get breast cancer. That's just the background risk. If all of those women were on old styles of HRT that almost no doctor prescribes anymore, but let's just use it for an argument. The next line down shows that about 4 additional women would develop breast cancer, so 27 out of 1,000, okay? If the same women had a body mass index of over 30, instead of 23 cases, it would be 48 cases per 1,000. If they were having 2 units of alcohol an evening, it would go from 23 to 28 cases. And right down the bottom, if they were exercising for 2.5 hours a week, it would be 7 fewer cases of breast cancer. When I talk to women, what I mention to them is that if I can help you with your symptoms that you've come to me for, I dare say you're going to exercise more. I dare say you might lose a few kilos, and your overall risk is actually going to be decreased from using the treatment because your lifestyle is now actually able to be something you pursue because your symptoms now have a bit of a handle on them. We've got on the sheets at everyone's chairs, we've got some of the resources. If you want to find out more, these are great. The Australasian Menopause Society has a number of patient leaflets, which are all free to access, excellent information. And the Jean Hale Society is a not-for-profit charity, which also has some excellent information in there. Thank you, everyone. It's 6:25. Did you want me to go through some of? Yeah?
Well, so I'll say thank you
lovely.
for breaking down this often misunderstood topic of menopause. I know a lot of you have submitted online, so we've tried to incorporate answering those questions. But does anyone have a question? Just raise your hand and we'll have the microphone around. Over here, Kim.
So thank you for being this to find a lot of things, The question I have is that at what stage, like you said, the benefits of HRT or at what stage you think that you need those? Like it's depending, like it's basically the conversation between your GP and you, and then you define because there are benefits of the HRT, but how do you know that you are like your symptoms are that much that you need it? Mm-hmm. Sorry about.
Yeah. So did everyone hear that question? Yeah. Look, I strongly advocate for everyone at least having that conversation. I think, the doctors, the generation of doctors before me, it has really moved from a more patriarchal model of medicine to a very much a partnership model. And in that partnership, I feel my role, and I feel doctors' role more broadly, is to be armed with the risks and the benefits and have a detailed conversation and empower you to make that decision yourself. I don't think it's for me to make that decision for you. I'll always give my strong recommendations one way or the other, but I think ultimately we're an information source. Yeah. So I think I would urge everyone to have that conversation. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good question. The timing is something that's really important to discuss with patients. If it has been a long time since the final menstrual period, the benefits versus risk equation starts tipping in a different way. So the maximal benefit is seen leading up to and soon, typically within 10 years of the final menstrual period. After 10 years, and kind of going back to my blue diamond earlier, symptoms have typically ameliorated, if not completely, significantly, but also a lot of the benefits need to be reappraised because it can start tipping towards risk. But it's very important to mention that this is different from patients who have been on HRT and are still continuing it well into 60s, 70s, 80s. That's a different thing. They've already been on it. They've never really stopped it. And in most cases, it's safe to continue. But initiating it for the first time a long time after your menopause, that's quite a detailed conversation that needs to be had with the doctor. I hope that answered your question. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, hi. Thank you. Yes, I could. Sorry, I was looking in the back there. Yeah. Yep. Mm. Yeah, absolutely. So I always think it's a great idea for physiotherapists to actually guide patients initially when they are starting weights training for the first time in their, in their fifth or sixth decade of life. I think a physio has an integral role in it. We're very lucky at North Shore. We've got two lovely physiotherapists who run classes and things. And as you said, the benefit is you don't just go in and start throwing yourself at weights. You do that in a trained environment if you've never done it before under supervision, and then eventually you can go free. So 100% agree with you. Yeah, I was at a conference last year, and Professor John Fuller is from the UK, and somebody put up their hand and said, "Professor, when do you stop HRT on your patients?" And he said, "Look, when they die, I I usually consider stopping treatment." Look, but it's a bit tongue in cheek. I think that the take home message actually is that there is no line in the sand for patients that have been on it. There's not necessarily a line in the sand, but moreover, there needs to be ongoing risk appraisal. And sometimes that risk appraisal will be, it's probably safer for you to stop now. But for a lot, it might be, you know what? It's safe for you to continue. And that's having that relationship with the GP or the gynecologist is critical to regular risk appraisal. Like anything, cholesterol, diabetes, all of those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, hi. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Look, the truth is we often don't. And for most, let's the patients that you're probably referring to are mostly in their 40s. And so for most of those patients, I would say, look, if you're relatively healthy, we could also give it a go and see how you go. Because most of them it will be safe to initiate treatment for. And if their symptoms don't improve in 6 to 12 weeks, well, then we have our answer that it possibly wasn't what they were hoping to get out of hormone treatment. And that kind of trial is going to be safe for the vast majority of patients. Yeah. Mm.
Again, referred me to about I didn't get a reply.
Yeah. 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 So, look, I think being a GP nowadays is impossibly tricky. Um, Trying to handle, and this is partly why I became a specialist. I want to pick one or two areas that I'm really good at. I want to know about it, and I want to kind of. I'm not. If you ask me about carotid artery disease, I can't answer it. And my family always looks at me disappointed because they expect me to be able to read the weather charts and pick what the economy is doing because I'm a doctor, but it's like, come on, mate. The modern GP faces so much information and there is no chance. So I think try and gravitate towards someone who does have an interest in that area. We do have a very strict criteria at Royal North Shore, and that's mostly to try and make sure that patients who are quite complex are coming through, but the patients who are less complex, they're managed in the primary care in the GP setting. But we do a lot of education, and part of why I wanted to come this evening was we love to spread the word. We do a lot of GP education, and we have a lot of advice lines where GPs can actually email or call up and just get some over the phone advice about how can I approach this patient, and happy to always help GPs out with that. Yeah, I probably need to. Oh yeah, please. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. I don't think so. Just to be clear, I don't think that person is a bad GP. I just think that everyone has their interests, and people, I think, more and more are advertising their particular interest in women's health or in menopause. I think it's becoming, a big industry that women are finding that a lot of GPs are navigating themselves towards. So I think you'll find, even if you Google menopause GP, you will find probably a lot of GPs that are doing telehealth services, face-to-face services. Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. That's a really diplomatic way of approaching it. I like it. Yep. Yeah. I look, I think there's a reason my initial appointments often go for 45 minutes, and it's navigating questions which, yeah, they're not easy questions that, yeah, they take a long time to explain and talk to the patient about. Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah.
Wow, wasn't that good? I know myself, I was feeling a bit like Alice in Wonderland and Googling away. So thank you. I know everyone probably has learnt something from you. So thank you so much, Dr. Nathur. Now we'll just give him a big round of applause before we move on to the next speaker. Okay, now we have our second speaker, who is Natalie Hooker, an accredited dietitian, also from Northern Sydney Local Health District Menopause Hub. Bit of a mouthful here. Natalie will be focusing on the role that food and nutrition can play in easing symptoms of menopause and promoting overall long-term health. Let's give a warm welcome to Natalie Hooker.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. In the essence of time, I know there's probably lots of questions maybe with regards to diet, and I've actually timed this myself today and realised that I might go over time, so I won't give it a huge spiel. I'm a senior dietitian at Royal North Shore Hospital. I've been working in that hospital for many years now in lots of different areas. I was fortunate enough to be asked to be part of the working group to set up the Menopause Hub last year and also work in the Menopause Hub. So it's been a fantastic experience to get that up and running and now see it in motion with all of these great professionals. So that's fantastic. And again, I agree, this is an opportunity for us to get the word out there. I think this is really a fantastic opportunity to sort of talk about these things and debunk some myths, I suppose, and that's what I'm going to talk a bit about today as well, because there is just so much information out there. It's really hard to really peel through it. And also in the back of that sheet that you've got, I've put some more reputable websites that I hope that you go to rather than your Instagram to find out about things. So I might get started, and then if we have time at the end, we can have some questions. So just a bit of an overview. Like I said, I'll have a bit of a chat about what the research says. Very briefly, and then also go into a little bit more about those other things such as weight and metabolism through the menopause transition. Generally, that's the big question I get from people is about weight maintenance, weight loss. Also, we talked about osteoporosis and just how important that is. So bone health, and we talk about the dietary interventions we can be doing to improve and decrease the risk of osteoporosis and osteopenia, and also regarding heart disease. So, it's at that transition. So at every stage of life, nutrition is important for something, and it does change. And so I find I'm often speaking to patients about that change and what that means and what that looks like. What does the research actually say? I don't have fantastic news because there's not a lot of research in regards to diet and menopause symptoms, the acute symptoms themselves. It's becoming more and more, which is great, but there's very little to say there's a certain food or diet which is going to stop hot flushes or reduce the severity of hot flushes. There might be some things you could try, decreasing alcohol intake, not having spicy foods, or hot drinks if you're having a hot flush. But really what they're saying is that there's nothing in particular that I can say is, why don't you have that? And that is going to stop your hot flushes. There's a little bit of research to say that possibly a vitamin E supplement may reduce hot flushes by 1 a day. And that's about it. So if it's complex or severe, as Samir was saying, we probably really want to have a chat to someone, because we know that MHT is really that thing that's going to help, and the benefits are obviously there. There's actually no evidence from diet or life for helping sleep either, unfortunately, or brain fog, as much as we'd like to, joint pains, moods. I just said that MHT is likely the most effective for these acute situations. But what we do know is that there's lots of evidence for the role of diet in well-being and vitality. So if we can follow a healthy, varied, balanced diet and get that sort of worked out, you might be able to deal with these symptoms a little bit better because it's a bit easier, get more energy, less fatigue, might be able to sleep better. And also we'll talk about exercise and how that actually helps as well. So, and also that longer term stuff, that there is so much evidence about chronic disease and how diet can help reduce those risks going forward. So metabolism, weight, and body composition. So one of the biggest things is that I hear is I've gained this weight. I've never had a problem with my weight. Some people have said I've always had a problem with my weight. Now I've even got more of a problem with my weight. But the research actually says women will gain about half a kilo a year between the ages of 45 and 55 years and probably haven't changed anything in regards to their lifestyle. So they're like, what am I doing wrong? It's a multifactorial, obviously, but one of the main things is that it's just that the hormonal changes, there's a change in metabolism. So this is a bit of a quick graph. Sorry, it is very small, but over our age group, so that's 18 to 29 years, and then it goes to the next group of 30 to 59, 60. This is your basal metabolic rate, or your baseline amount of calories that your body burns to live every day. So when we're young and fit and healthy, running around, we're burning heaps. And then as we get older, we just burn less sitting here. So that means we have to adjust to that because our body doesn't need as much nutrition as it did before. And actually the type of nutrition that we're getting changes as well. It's important that we address weight gain early. It's much easier to lose 2 kilos than 10, I say. But also maintenance is an achievement too. So if we're saying that everyone around the menopause transition gains weight anyway, what we have to be careful of is also realizing that if you're maintaining your weight, well, that's awesome because most people will be gaining weight at this time. We talk a bit about the BMI. So what is a healthy weight? What is obesity? We do still talk a bit around, I do still use BMI sometimes purely because all the research is based on is somebody obese or overweight or within the healthy weight range. And that's really the only reason because we know that lots of things make up our weight and we're learning more and more about muscle mass and how important that is. But waist circumference is another one as well. So we do want to aim for a BMI under 25, but many people will say I've never been in a BMI of under 25. So, you know, and that's correct. But what we do know is once we hit that 30 and above, all that research is really quite strong, as Samir was saying, with regards to increased risk of breast cancers, cardiovascular disease, diabetes. So it is important to maybe know what that is and try and, reduce your weight or at least maintain your weight through this. The other thing is waist circumference is another good one because when we do gain weight throughout the menopause transition, it's actually generally around that central part, no longer the bums and legs. It's around the central part, which is more the unhealthy weight, I suppose, that around the organs and visceral fat, which increases our risk of cardiovascular disease. So you can take a measurement at the smallest part of your waist, and they're saying that if the waist is less than 80 centimetres, then you're in the healthy waist range, and anything over 88 centimetres would be classified as obese. So how do we decrease weight? There's lots and lots and lots of different options, and it's very individualised. And we're learning more and more about how chronic weight our weight can be. Our body does like to be a set weight. So often I'm speaking, step one is to have a look at diet and what sort of foods they're eating and looking at reduction in calories. We have to adjust for the fact that our basal metabolic rate is reduced. So we have to reduce our calories. Often majority of our calories come from high fat foods and carbohydrates. So one of the big things is I kind of target, let's see how many carbohydrates you're having. I'm not at all saying we cut out carbs, not for that at all. But in fact, the difference between what your body needs in your 40s, say for carbohydrates compared to your 50s is huge. So they're saying around your 40s, you can have about 6 serves of carbohydrates a day. 50 and above, they're saying 4 serves of carbohydrates a day. And 1 serve is 1 slice of bread or half a cup of rice that's cooked, half a cup of pasta that's cooked, or a crumpet or a half a bread roll. So, or half a cup of cereal or a quarter of a cup of oats. So when you're thinking, we're recommending 4 serves of carbohydrates a day, that's not a lot. If you're having 2 pieces of toast for breakfast and maybe a stir fry or something for dinner where possibly we're going over a cup or so. So, and that's every day, right? So things happen, you go on holidays, go on weekends and, you're eating different things, which might be a little bit more. So that is something that I do talk to a lot of people. If we're adjusting what we're eating for what we need, that's one place I go. I don't go no carb, I just say less carb. And also having a look at snacks. People don't really realise how much calories are in snacks. So what I've put here is try and reduce your calories by about, they're saying if you reduce your calories by about 500 calories a day, you should be able to lose about half a kilo a week. So what's 100 calories look like? It's a medium glass of juice or 1 Tim Tam, or 3 teaspoons of butter. I've got all the good stuff here. So half a medium croissant, half a cup of cooked rice, 1 small latte, a medium glass of wine, or 10 cashews, for example. So what I try and get people to do is we need less. What are you snacking on? Because it's very easy to make up those 500 calories over the day. If you're grabbing 2 handfuls of cashews, that's 200, 250 calories already. And they are a healthy food and everyone's saying we need to. And that's true. A lot of our healthy foods are very good for us, but we probably just don't need as much as what we're having. So next is a bit about bone health. So we were talking about osteoporosis and how it increases with age and what's really important. One of the big things that I want to talk about is calcium. So calcium as we age is not as absorbed as easily and we actually excrete it more. So as we get older, we need more calcium because we can't actually hold it onto it as well. So we do need more, and we know that if we have enough calcium, it reduces our risk of fracture. Another thing to be aware of, I often hear people say, but my doctor said my calcium on my blood test was normal, so I'm getting enough calcium. But unfortunately, that doesn't actually tell you if you're getting enough or not. Generally, your body is very good at keeping your calcium levels normal in your blood, and it has nothing to do with how much dietary calcium you're having. So if I'm assessing if people are getting enough calcium, I have to just look at what they're having and calculate it. The bones actually absorb and reabsorb into the blood quite easily with calcium, so it's never really representative. And the other thing is calcium supplementation. So a lot of people say to me, I don't get enough dairy, I'll just have a calcium supplement. And there is research to say that calcium supplementation alone does not prevent fracture. And in fact, there's something about dietary calcium that actually has that protection. So it's best to try and get dietary calcium first. And for a small percentage of people that I speak to who may have dairy intolerances, allergies, really cannot get enough calcium in their diet, I do recommend a supplement. But just on that note, I don't recommend any more than around 600 milligrams a day, if anyone's writing notes. And that's purely because large amounts of calcium supplementation may be shown to increase calcification of arteries and increase cardiovascular disease. So super important, calcium from diet's the best way to go. So where in the diet do you get it? Milk, yogurt, cheese. Cow's milk dairy is the easiest way to get it in. We can also have fish with soft bones, so canned sardines and tuna. And there's a ton of different alternative milks out there now, so almond and soy, but they need to be fortified. So calcium is not natural in these products. And I'll show you how to check that in a tick. So how much do you need? So basically, up until 50 years of age, it's about 1,000 milligrams a day of calcium. And we usually say that's like 3 serves of calcium. And I'll show you what a serve looks like. After the age of 50, we're looking at 1,300 milligrams a day. That's 4 serves of calcium, which is actually quite a lot. So what's a serve? It's a standard cup of milk, cow's milk. It's a small singular tub of yogurt, 40 grams of cheese, which kind of looks like a matchbox, or 2 pre-sliced thin pieces of cheese. And if we're looking at fortified alternative milks, we need to be making sure that they're fortified for your alternative milk. So that's around 300 milligrams per cup of standard cup of milk. A lot of barista style milks may not be necessarily like that, but if you're buying them in the supermarket, you can check yourself. And I think this is not going to work because it's probably too small for you guys. But if you wanted to check your labels, just making sure you're using the per serve column and on your milk and looking for calcium. And if that calcium is around 300 milligrams per 250 mils of that almond milk or oat milk, then you know it's fortified and it's a good option if you can't tolerate cow's milk dairy. What does 300 milligrams of calcium look like? So I talked about serves, right? So what I want to let you know as well is that a lot of people say, but I don't really like the cow's milk. I don't want to have the dairy. So I know that almonds have calcium, so I'll just have my almonds. When in fact, if you actually look at the calcium itself that's available in these foods, so cow's milk dairy, 1 glass, like I said, is 1 serve or 300 milligrams of calcium. You need to have 90 almonds to get that amount of calcium in. And yes, they're good fats and fiber and protein, but 90 almonds is definitely going to, kick off with calories if you're trying to maintain your weight. 2 cups of spinach. And the thing is, what I haven't got here either is that majority of the plant-based calcium isn't as absorbed. So if we absorb 100% of calcium from that milk, would probably only absorb about 50% from the almonds and about 30% from the spinach. So our body wants to absorb calcium from cow's milk dairy products. I'm worried about time. So protein and vitamin D. So protein, super important. Muscles need protein. Okay, so we are going to maybe reduce carbohydrates a bit if people are keen to maintain a healthier weight. So we just got to replace it with something. A small amount of lean protein is really good. So I'm often getting people to start thinking, can I have some protein at every meal? Really good for muscle building. Also, if you're going to start doing some exercise, like I said, it's going to build your muscle. If you have more muscle, if you build a little bit more muscle and keep that muscle on, you are going to burn more calories just sitting there than if you didn't. So people's metabolic rates are higher if you carry more muscle than if you don't. So that's why it's so important that we talk about exercise as well after this. So where is protein from? We know the animal sources, so beef, lamb, chicken, fish. But we also have dairy products have protein in it, lentils and legumes, eggs, soy, so tofu, and other sources as well. And all of these are very good. Vitamin D is really important. I won't talk too much about vitamin D. It's not really dietary. It's about the sun. And so getting about 5 minutes a day in the summer is what they're, saying with your arms and legs uncovered. And get your vitamin D tested, I always say, because we've got lots of people who are vitamin D deficient. But you do get vitamin D from food, but it's generally not the main source of how we can increase our vitamin D if you have low vitamin D. Lastly, I'll talk about cardiovascular disease because, as Samir was saying, it's one of the most prevalent, chronic diseases in women as we get older, and there are some myths out there as well. One of the big ones was around cholesterol for a very long time. So cholesterol is that fatty substance that builds up in your arteries and can cause clogs in your arteries. Our body makes cholesterol, which is kind of good because we need it. We need some of it in our body for different systems. However, if we have too much of it, especially too much of the bad stuff, that can actually lead to cardiovascular disease. And back in the day, they used to say anything that's high in cholesterol was going to increase your cholesterol. But our body was pretty smart and figured that if we eat lots of food that's high in cholesterol, we just stop making it. So it's not that at all. It's actually saturated fats. So the research is out there and it's shown that saturated fats is the thing that will actually increase our cholesterol levels. Some women also find they might eat a very healthy diet and still have high cholesterol levels. So that can be a genetic situation, but also just the hormonal changes. So people often speak to me about how their cholesterol only just started coming up through the menopause transition, and that's because of the changes in hormones. So as part of my role, is I'd have a look at someone's diet and see if there's ways we can reduce maybe saturated fats, and if it's a very healthy diet, what else we can do. It's not always diet though. So saturated fat, it's that solid white stuff that you see on meat. So if you have a Wagyu steak with all the marbling, that's saturated fat. You have a lamb chop with the tail on it, that's saturated fat. Chicken skin, I know it's the best bit, but that's saturated fat. So if you've got high cholesterol, or if you want to try and minimize saturated fat, take the skin off, cut the fat off before you cook your meat. Butter, palm oil, coconut oil, coconut milk, coconut cream, these are all saturated fats as well. And any foods that are used to cook that. So that's why a lot of our, biscuits and shortbreads and things that are high in butter and palm oils and things like that are high in saturated fat, why we call it high in saturated fats. Processed meats, so salamis, sausages, these are generally high in saturated fats, and obviously takeaway foods that are fried and cream-based things. So a lot of cream-based pastas and pastry-based things which have lots of butter is also high in saturated fat. So trying to reduce those in your diet is good as well. But diet can also help improve your cholesterol levels. So it's also about including unsaturated fats in your diet, or the healthy fats. And these are things like your olive oils. There is starting to be a lot more discussion around the Mediterranean diet being heart protective, fantastic for vitality, longevity, using olive oils. If you're watching your weight though, just be careful how much, because even though it's a healthy fat, like avocados and nuts, yeah, healthy fat, fantastic for your cholesterol levels in your heart. But if you're watching your weight, just be careful how much you use it because they're very high in calories. We recommend eating fatty fish 2 to 3 times a week. So salmon, tuna, mackerel is a really good option. Sardines, including plant sterols. So some people might not have heard plant sterols, but it's kind of like a plant cholesterol and it competes in your body for cholesterol. So you've probably seen things like heart active margarines or the heart active milks. And these have actually been proven to help reduce your cholesterol levels. And often I get people to do that if they don't want to go on a medication straight away, but it can reduce your bad cholesterol by 10%. But you do need a tablespoon of it a day. If you only just have a little scraping of it, it's probably a waste of your money. But if you do have high cholesterol and you want to try and get it down, do all that stuff about trying to reduce the saturated fats, but maybe consider for a while using those plant sterol margarines. Low-fat dairy, so full-fat dairy is saturated fat. I don't really want to go there first, but sometimes I get, if people have high cholesterol levels, to say, look, maybe just a light milk and a light cheese might also help reduce your cholesterol levels. So just be aware that the fat in dairy can be more of a saturated fat. And eggs, I used to get really a bad rap because of the cholesterol in eggs. But as we now know, cholesterol in food doesn't really do anything to our cholesterol in our blood. But they still do have saturated fat. So if you have a high cholesterol, we recommend, well, the Heart Foundation recommends keeping to about 7 eggs a week as your protein. Last slide, and then we will have some questions. I just want to give fibre a big rap. This is becoming more and more and more something we should be talking about. And that is, yes, the 2 serves of fruit and 5 veg. But the reason why it's important, why we need to aim for 35 grams is, one, we've just talked about cardiovascular health. So fibre actually clings to cholesterol and gets rid of out of your body. So soluble fibre, oats, psyllium that you might add to cereals, chia, LSA, these sorts of things you can add to breakfast will physically help reduce your cholesterol levels. It also keeps your bowels healthy, as in regular, which is fantastic. But we're learning more and more, and we don't really know a lot, but we're learning more and more about our gut health, immunity, vitality, how we're feeling, sort of that gut brain, moods, everything. So fibre is really important. We recommend 5 serves of vegetables a day, which is quite a lot. 1 serve is a cup of salad or half a cup of cooked vegetables. So I would really strongly recommend, if people can, fill up half your plate at dinner time with vegetables or salad. They're all really good, all high in fibre, very low in calories if you're watching your weight, and filling. So that's really good. The other thing is choose whole grain carbohydrates. So if you are having a whole grain carbohydrate, please choose something that's, like a multigrain bread, over white breads and white pastas and white rices. It is another way of getting some fibre into your diet. And fibre supplements do work, things like Metamucil and Benefiber. However, again, you might not need to use that if you're having a lot. And just the little terms and conditions on this is, don't go home and start trying to aim for 35 grams of fibre tomorrow. If you don't, you'll probably get super constipated. So make sure you slowly increase it if you'd like to do that, and match it with at least 2 litres of water a day, because that can also be an issue. If you get dehydrated, you can get constipated. So I'm going to end with that because I know there might be some questions and we still have another speaker. So thanks. That's it. No. I recommend them for certain situations if people aren't getting enough protein from other sources in their diet, and then I'd probably be careful with which ones you have. You're right, there is a whole market out there for vitamins, minerals, shakes, nutritional supplements. So we've just got to be very careful with what they have. But I would say that in regards to protein supplements themselves, some of them are quite good. But you've got to, yes, I would say that you've just got to be careful of how much other things are in them as well. How do you find the good ones? Well, again, I'd probably be speaking to a dietitian if you need them, because we can really probably get enough from our diet alone. I don't think people necessarily need a protein supplement. I'd probably be using that more for people who are not able to maintain their weight or have other conditions that are more malnourished. But for the general population, protein supplements are just not recommended if we're achieving enough protein through those sources that I was talking about before. Yep. Ghee. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yes. It's a saturated fat. Yeah, so it is classified as a saturated fat. So again, if you go to the doctors, get your cholesterol checked and they're high and you use ghee, I'd be saying reduce it or swap it to another oil. It should be fine. It's exactly it. What Heart Foundation is saying is that really, I mean, there's ways, if your cholesterol's okay, but it's probably part of your management health-wise to be looking at that. You know, it's obviously you're going to be getting checked up yearly, and if these sorts of things come up. But I think it's important that to say that saturated fats are going to increase your cholesterol, but it's about what else you're having and how often you're having it. So, you know, at the moment, your body's saying it's okay because your cholesterol levels are normal. That's okay. That's right. I mean, the yolk does have the fats in it, and it's just protein, which is in the whites. And again, I'd probably be saying that's not a problem, but it's still important if you're having large amounts of eggs. And as part of your healthy wellbeing checkup, get your cholesterols checked. And if it's high, then have a consideration of what else you're having in your diet and maybe speak to a dietitian. But yes, you're right. It's probably not the same because it's really just the protein in the whites. Yeah, I mean, the whole egg's actually really healthy. I'm just saying that if somebody says to you, you've got high cholesterol, the Heart Foundation's recommending that you don't have more than 7 whole eggs a week, but the whites are fine. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can't get estrogen in your diet. But yes, you're right, as in soy does contain phytoestrogens, which can mimic estrogen in the body. So there's more and more research coming out about a lot of people try to avoid it because they're concerned about hormone breast cancer related to breast cancers, but there's also a lot of evidence to say that soy can be very protective against it. So dietary soy is very healthy and I recommend it in a diet. I don't recommend phytoestrogen supplements, and that's just any mega dosing of things like that we've got to be careful of, especially in regards to there's just not enough research out there to know how that might affect our bodies. No, not through diet, through like supplements, like tablets. Yeah. So yeah, you can get some mega dosing of phytoestrogens and it's not recommended. Yeah. That's okay. Everywhere. Yep. It doesn't have to be that hard. That's what it is. It doesn't have to be that hard. Look, intermittent fasting may work for some, but I especially don't recommend it for women going through the menopause transition because they're always complaining about fatigue and feeling, tired. And what we don't want to be doing is having moments of fasting and then a really small window to eat all the food that you need. And especially if we need to get those 4 serves of calcium in a day, I don't know how you do it. So look, there is lots of fad diets out there. Most of them, I would say, aren't really well backed by science to do it. If I would just say be careful with what you can read out there. Eat for Health website is on the back of that form, which is basically the guidelines of a healthy diet at different ages, all different lifestyles, including children. You can read all about it in there. And that's based on over 55,000 journal articles. So I don't know how many influencers can say what I'm doing today is backed by 55,000 journal articles. So that's why I spruik the government website and the guidelines. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Natalie, for those practical and empowering tips on eating well through this life stage. 7 eggs, 7 hours of fitness a week. Is that the magic number? Now we'll move on to our third speaker. So our final speaker today is Eleanor Spence, a fitness instructor from the Ku-ring-gai Fitness and Aquatic Centre. Eleanor will be talking about how regular exercise and physical movement can help us feel stronger, more energised and mentally well during menopause. Please welcome Eleanor Spence.
Well, I haven't got a lovely PowerPoint, but I do have a box. I am actually been on, I should introduce myself. I'm Eleanor Spence, and I've been a personal trainer for 22 years, and I'm 62, and I've been on the PAC, which I'm even happier now it's on the PBS, for 10 years. And at the beginning of this year, the 14th of January, I was at Lane Cove Road and a truck ran up the back of me, and then he drove off, and I broke or fractured my vertebrae here and I fractured my T6 and T11. And the fact is, I believe it's a mixture of what Samir was saying and Natalie, and the fact that I was always kept myself fit, that I've completely healed. So we've launched things that we give up at our age. It's so important. And the thing is, we don't have the estrogen, and that's what keeps us healthy. So when we were younger, we didn't have to help ourselves because it was there looking after us. But now we get to our age, we've got to look after ourselves. So we've got to, there's nothing wrong with, I mean, I don't know, I'm not a doctor. But as far as I'm concerned, it's just so good for us. Before I came, I put the gel onto my arm and I took my little tablet. I used to find the patch, I don't know whether I'm a sweaty Betty, but that patch would just slide off. And at the beginning of the year, we had a shortage in the gel. So I heard somebody ask, what happens if you don't take the gel? What I noticed is my hot sweats came back. I was waking up in the middle of the night and having to take that nightie off. I'd sit outside. I hope the neighbours didn't see. But because they came back. But now that I'm back on, I'm using the gel, not the patches. And I find that so much better. But the only thing is, in winter, I have to stand with no clothes for 5 minutes, so I absorb the gel. But to me, that exercise and the nutrition, because the back specialist told me to take calcium and vitamin D, and because the vitamin D absorbs my calcium, and I really believe that's what made me heal. So I just think that we've all got to think really positively and just think it's now time that we look after ourselves because we haven't got the estrogen. We haven't got the progesterone, I was right. And we haven't got that teeny little bit of testosterone that we have that helps the strong muscles when we do what? Yeah, which helps us. That little bit of that testosterone. So I really think it's the time now that, and what I always say when people come and see me, like, and during my classes, is that if you haven't exercised, you start really small and then you build it up. So you aim for perhaps just 15 minutes each day, and then you can include accidental exercise, like walking up and down stairs, walking from here to the shops. That's still exercise. And then gradually build it up. And what we should be aiming for is we've got to do strength exercise. We've got to do, because we want to increase our body mass, we've got to do exercises for our muscles because our muscles protect our bones. We've got to do some aerobic exercise because, we want that oxygen to pump around, circulation, we want to get our breathing. And that's really important. We want to work on our pelvic floor. And people don't realise if you put your hands there and you put your tongue on the roof of your mouth, you can feel a lifting. And people used to say to me, oh, because I used to work at a nursing home, I don't have a pelvic floor. But we all do. It might have got a little bit lazy, but you can do exercise to give that a kick along. It's just a muscle. And, when you start doing planks, like these plank competitions, when you get to our age, we don't want to bear down on our pelvic floor. We don't want to do piles of sit-ups. You can do exercises in a chair that save the pelvic floor. And we've got to make sure we're lifting it before we even do it. And I always say to people that come in and do a plank, it's 9 seconds. Don't do these minute ones because then you find you hold your breath. If you hold your breath, you're putting pressure on your internal organs. That's why we always say when you lift a weight, inhale, prepare, and exhale, lift. It's like a tennis player. The ball comes towards them and they grunt. That's the exhalation. So it's really, really important that, we follow that breathing and that we work our muscles. And when we're young, we don't have to worry about doing things, too well. Who cares, really? But as we get older, we've really got to do things correctly. Now, when I'm at the gym, does that move that way? Yep. I see people pointing their toes. I'm going to aggravate my hip. But also, if you stand straight, you've got a nice round bottom. Once you start pointing your toes, that bottom goes flat, your pelvis goes forward. It's bad posture. It's bad for your hips and it's bad for your pelvic floor. So we've really got to make sure as we get older that we're doing things correctly. And that's the most important thing. When we do a squat, you want to make sure that the hips go back, that you can see the toes. You see so many people and the knees go forward. And we should be, it's like what Samir said, we should be concentrating on glutes, pulling and pushing. Pulling and pushing. Yeah, I did it right. Yeah, doing those sort of exercises because they're the exercises that we really need to concentrate on, the big muscles. We should also do something to strengthen our back. So we should be doing Pilates to help stabilize us because we need our muscles to be nice and stable. And we should also be doing yoga because when you're menopausal, sometimes you're quite stressed and you can't sleep. So meditation is great. Yoga is great. Cardio is great. You just got to find an exercise that you actually enjoy and then stick at it. And that's the hardest thing to do. If you've never liked exercise, is to find something you like. And always think it's the muscles that work. So when you do something, you don't want to use your joint. You want to have those muscles on protecting, and you use imaginary string that pulls up. So just do it and you feel the difference. Everyone, we've got a little bit of room. Okay, so imagine, switch your glute muscle on and just lift it up. Your foot's flexed. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
And then lower. Pull it up, hold it, and lower. I've got my tummy in, so I'm actually working my abs, and this should be starting to get tired. So we don't have to do hard exercises to make things work, but we've got to do strength training. As we get older, we must strengthen our muscles and our bones. We must do some cardio exercises, which can be just walking, dancing. Walking's great. It's also a bit of weight bearing, some resistance, some strength, and add it. And it doesn't have to be heavy weights. Start on low weights. And then once you get to the point that you can do 3 sets of 10, and you notice you haven't bared down on anything, you've got your breathing correctly, then increase your weights as you go. And always trying to work the major muscle groups. If you've got back problems or shoulder problems, don't go all the way up, because that can actually aggravate your back. If you've got back problems, we're more inclined to get inflammation as we get into menopause. And that inflammation, if I do piles and piles of reps, all I'm going to do is aggravate it. If you get any bursitis or any of those things, you don't want to inflame. It's already inflamed. So you've got to do everything gradually. Think about your body, listen to it, and if it says, I've had enough, yeah, stop. And then concentrate on another area. But think of it as the minimum we need is 30 minutes each day. And it's a good idea to add 2 strength training a week. And if you could do 30 minutes every day, mixing it up, it's good. Yeah, so that's sort of my advice. Do it gradually, do a bit of everything, relax and enjoy it. And then I work at KFAC, and we've got a lovely new indoor pool, and I teach Pilates, aqua aerobics, low impact classes. And low impact are the better things as we get older. We should do, jumping. If you're fit, fine. But if you haven't done that sort of exercise before, it's not the best thing to get into really strong, heavy exercise. Build your body up to that sort of thing. But we've got a beautiful new pool, and it really is lovely. We've got a 5-day trial at the moment. And when you're lucky and you're in the gym, you can look out on all the beautiful trees that they've got. It's really calming and relaxing. It really is a nice gym. We've got an outdoor pool, great for our vitamin D. Just get out there with your little fatty areas. Best places to absorb your vitamin D. And have your calcium, have your milk out there, and you'll be right. But it really is a lovely pool and a lovely centre. Yeah. Well, interval training is a great way to lose weight. So what you're doing is you're starting off just say walking. Instead of getting your cardio gradually up and then bringing it down, that's a great way to lose weight. Of course, if you build up muscle also burns fat. But it's just a matter of being consistent. By the sounds of it, you are consistent. Trying to cut down perhaps on your food if you can. That's sort of a good thing. Do you do anything like Pilates or things like that for this sort of area? Yeah, give it a go. Because, yeah, it really does help. Yeah, I mean, we don't have a reformer at KFAC, but to me, reformer, basically, you've got your arms, you've got your legs going, you can get a cardio workout at the same time. Yeah, so if you've got that facility, add that, but really do interval training on a treadmill. It's great, on a bike, gradually build it up. So you're doing, slow, then build it up, then as hard as you can go, and then bring it back. Yeah, and then add your weights, say 3 times a week, and that'll build muscle, and muscle burns fat. Yeah. Well, I've got the estrogen, the combo pack. So I have my estrogen pump and my prometrium, 100 milligram capsule.
But is that when you have asked your GP or just by yourself?
Oh, no, I was always a slack person and I never used to have any of those sort of women's tests, those horrible tests. I never had my breasts tested. I didn't bother with anything like that. And I'm still, the doctor keeps saying, no, you've got to have your bowel test, that bowel test. Well, that's a thought when I turned 50. I haven't done that yet either. And I'm now 62, but I'm working on it. I'm thinking about it. But I went to the doctor because what I was finding was I'm generally a calm person, but I felt I was getting cranky and I felt I just hated feeling hot. I just would burn up at nighttime and then I'd wake up and I'd have to literally get out of bed, take my nightie off. So I went to the doctor and the doctor sent me to, because I don't live around here, sent me to a gynecologist in Meadowbank. And first of all, she made me have a cervical test. She made me have breast screen test. And she said, I won't give it to you unless you have your tests. So every 2 years, I have a breast test. Every 5 years, I'm having a cervical test. So I'm up to date with that. And then she gives me my box. And what I noticed was when I didn't take that, when the patches weren't around, that gel makes such a difference. But I really believe in the combination of good food, Samir, and exercise. And I don't think we can go wrong. And I'm 62 and I think I look okay. And I feel okay. Yeah.
I would just say, yes, there is other options along the way. Obviously, there's lots of other options. Speak to your doctor. Some of them are very good for people who are finding it very difficult to lose weight, but they're specific people. So you really do have to speak to a medical professional. And I do request, which is not happening anyone who starts with medications, to speak to a dietitian when finding that obviously they're not able to follow a complete diet if it's such a low diet and some of the side effects that come with it. But we're learning more and more about the medications and how the people who high BMI is on their own risk. So we have to start looking at what is more riskier and what's not. So for some people it does work well, but you need to speak to a professional for that.
Can I say something about that? Because I've got my experience in there. Those who want to reduce the weight, I can give my husband, for example, he is diabetic, so he has got a reason to take that, and but if he doesn't control his diet, he doesn't lose weight. He won't with your percent weight. So it's not a golden tablet and something like that. And he gets a lot of side effects. He gets cramps in the tummy, vomits, and also it's not a pleasant thing. So I would suggest anyone to take it. Unless a doctor tells you. It's not something like a tablets and
and just on that note, what I like to say about these things as well is that it's not just about weight to say whether you're healthy or not. So I went to a similar conference, the same conference probably last year. Celia and Derek are talking more and more about these medications and maybe the long-term effects for our health. We're not getting enough calcium because we can't satisfy those nutritional requirements we have. What's going to happen in the long term? So, but we do have to consider all these other risks if you have BMI or diabetes. Some of the medications might be relevant.
Now, I just want to say thank you to Eleanor, and what a great reminder of how movement can be medicine. But you know what? And thank you for sharing your story. It was so authentic. Everyone was laughing. We've had it, yeah. So I actually want to thank all three speakers. But let's give them all a round of applause. Now, before we close, I'd like to once again invite our speakers to come to the front to receive a small token of appreciation from Council. Doesn't look all that small, but we are Sydney's Green Heart. We sincerely thank you for volunteering your time and sharing your knowledge this evening. Your insights have made this forum an engaging, educational and empowering experience for everyone here tonight. Thank you.
Let's take a photo.
Yeah, let's have a group photo. What if everyone gets up and we do a nice big photo? Come on, get up. Danny, can you do a group photo when they're ready?
Do I have a choice?
No, stand up. Thank you. Can I have some close on the mic or you all run away?
300 milligrams of calcium.
Oh, everyone's running away, but that's okay. Oh, look, you know what? Thank you. That's it. That's all good. Thank you. Good. Yeah.
Nice and relaxed.